Listen to a lecture in a U.S. history class.
Good afternoon, class. Today I want to talk a little about something that's done more, I think, to shape the landscape of the United States as it is today than, probably more than just about any other phenomenon: the interstate highway system. The interstate system has been called the largest public works project in the history of the country, maybe in the history of the world, and it's definitely one of the world's great engineering wonders. When the Century Highway in Los Angeles was completed in 1993, it marked the end, almost the end. There were still some bits and pieces that weren't finished, but it effectively marked the end of a 40-year project that cost hundreds of billions of dollars. Okay, let's take a trip back in time. Let's go back to the early part of the 20th century. Let's say you've just bought a brand new automobile, maybe a shiny new Model A Ford. Here's your problem. You can drive your car around the city, but if you want to go from city to city, there are no roads to speak of. When the weather is bad, people joke about losing automobiles in the mud. In fact, in many places, roads are probably worse than they were 100 years before. Anyone guess why? No? Okay. Remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about how, after the Civil War, the railroad became dominant, the dominant form of transportation? Does that ring a bell? So what was one of the side effects of this? The roads meant for horses, for carts, for carriages, these all fell into disrepair because passengers and goods all moved by railroad. There was no reason to maintain roads. Anyway, you've got these terrible roads, no way to get from place to place. So what do you motorists do? You organize, you form groups, and then you demand that the government build roads. These groups of motorists went by a lot of different names, depending on where they were, but collectively they were known as the Better Roads Movement. And the government responded. It responded slowly, but it responded. Roads were built, but it would be years, many years, before there was a comprehensive highway system. Okay, let's move ahead in time a few years. It's 1919, and a young Army officer, whose name is Dwight David Eisenhower, is ordered to lead a military convoy of trucks and motorcycles across the country, from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco, California. He's ordered to get there as soon as possible. It takes him, you might find this hard to believe, but it took him 62 days. 62 days! Okay, now it's the 1930s, the time of the Great Depression, as I know you'll remember, and there are millions of unemployed workers, millions, and President Roosevelt put some of them to work on public works projects. These projects include road building. In 1938, the first superhighway opens. It's called the Pennsylvania Turnpike. You may have traveled on it yourself and not found it all that exciting. However, at the time it opened, it was known as the Dream Road. This 4-lane highway became a model for the highways of the future. So, after World War II, the United States really and truly enters the automobile age. By 1950, there are over 50 million vehicles on the road. In 1954, Dwight David Eisenhower, he's the President of the United States by now, he proposes a system of superhighways. This system would basically connect all of the major cities in the United States. Of course, Eisenhower has been interested in roads for a long time. There were two major events in his life that influenced the way he thinks about highways. One is his wartime experience. He was commander of the Allied forces in Europe during World War II, and he saw the advantage that the efficient German Autobahn system, the German superhighway system, he saw the advantage this gave Germany during the war. The other event? It's that long, hard trip he took across the country back in 1919. So, in 1956, Congress passes the Federal Highway Act, and the first section of the interstate system is built in Kansas, Eisenhower's home state. The system is supposed to be completed by 1972, but it's not finished, as I said, until the 1990s. The interstate highway system has had just an enormous impact on life in the United States. It's created millions of jobs. It's provided an incredibly efficient system for moving people and transporting goods around the country. And because of that, it's contributed to the decline of the railroads. Because of the safety factors that were built into the system, it's probably saved thousands of lives. It's helped create the suburbs that surround every U.S. city. Now, it's true there were suburbs before there were interstate highways, but the interstate system has helped accelerate their growth because, well, it's just so easy to travel from suburb to central city. Now, don't get me wrong, not all the effects of this superhighway system have been, well, positive, especially in urban areas. There have been whole neighborhoods destroyed to make way for roads. Just in Seattle, for example, thousands of homes were destroyed to make way for Interstate 5. Whole neighborhoods were, well, it was like having a river, a concrete river, a river of traffic cut through a neighborhood, or cut it off from other neighborhoods. There was opposition. There were protests. In Boston in 1966, an anti-highway group successfully blocked the building of a highway called the Inner Belt. Another group stopped the building of an interstate highway through San Francisco. Still, for better or worse, the interstate highway system has changed the face of the United States. And remember that trip from Washington to San Francisco in 1919 that took Eisenhower 62 days? Today you can make that same trip in just 72 hours.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you. Question 19. Which of the following caused the decline of roads in the United States in the 19th century? Question 20. How long did it take Dwight David Eisenhower to drive across the United States in 1919? Question 21. According to the speaker, which of these influenced the way President Eisenhower thought about highways? Question 22. When was the interstate highway system originally supposed to have been completed? Question 23. Which of the following is not given as an effect of the interstate highway system? Question 24. In which of these cities were interstate highway projects blocked by protests? Listen to a discussion among students preparing a presentation for an architecture class.
Okay, so the presentation on alternative housing in Professor Maxwell's class is going to be, what, the 21st?
Let me check. No, it's not until the 23rd, but we have to hand in a preliminary outline next Tuesday.
And this presentation counts for, I think it's a fourth of our grade, so we need to do a good job.
Right. So either of you do any research or decide what kind of housing we should talk about?
Well, I looked at a couple of websites on the internet and paged through some journals, but I didn't really come up with much of anything. How about you, Joyce?
As a matter of fact, I have some, I guess you could call it indirect experience with one type of alternative housing. I think I told you my uncle owns a construction company, and, last year he had these clients, this couple come to him and say they wanted him to help them build a kind of house called an earthship. They showed him the plans, and at first he thought they were nuts, but, well, He needed the business, so he helped them build the house, the Earthship, and he ended up thinking, well, he's actually thinking of building an Earthship for himself.
An Earthship? Huh? That sounds like something from a science fiction movie.
Yeah, I guess it does.
So, what's so interesting about Earthships?
Well, for one thing, they're made almost entirely out of recycled materials. In fact, the main building materials are old tires and aluminum cans. The outer walls consist of used tires packed with soil. Then you take the aluminum cans and tuck them between the tires, and then you cover the walls with cement.
You're kidding. I mean, I hate to say this, but used tires, old cans, dirt, cement, those aren't the most attractive building materials.
I know. They don't sound that attractive, not at all. But you can finish the interior, the inside of the Earthship, any way you want. You can finish the walls with plaster and paint them, or you can use wood panels. I've seen pictures of the one my uncle built. It's full of plants and art, and believe me, it looks really nice.
Well, Maxwell should love them. You know how she feels about building with recycled materials.
Yeah, but that's not all. Earthships are not only made from recycled materials, they also use very, very little power. They generate their own electricity from solar panels. These are up on the roof. And they use passive solar heating to provide heat in the winter.
Really? How do they do that?
Well, Earthships are basically shaped like the letter U. The 3 walls made of tires are on the west, north, and east sides. The open part of the U, which is on the south side, is made of glass windows, and they're angled upward to catch the winter sunlight.
Yeah, this definitely sounds like the kind of house Maxwell would love.
What about costs? How much does an Earthship cost?
Well, dirt, aluminum cans, a lot of the materials are either free or almost free. And a lot of times the owners help build the houses themselves. Earthships are a real bargain. My uncle's clients get a small nest for, well, I'm guessing, but it probably only cost them about $40,000, not counting the land it was built on.
What do you mean, a nest?
Oh, that's the most basic form of Earthship, the smallest type. Of course, you can spend a lot more if you build a big, fancy one.
Well, I vote we do our presentation on Earthships then, since Joyce already knows a lot about them, and they sound pretty interesting to me, too.
I'll go along with that. Like I say, I think Maxwell will love them, and she's the one who gives the grade.
Joyce, if you could get me some plans, I bet I could build a small model before we give our presentation.
Well, detailed plans are pretty expensive, but I can probably get you some photos of the Earthship that my uncle helped build.
That's probably all I'd need, as long as they show the house from all sides.
But would you have time to make a model before the presentation?
Oh, I'm sure I can. I can make a simple architectural model of just about anything in a couple of days.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you. Question 25. How did Joyce get most of her information about Earthships? Question 26. Which of these are not one of the main building materials used to construct Earthships? Question 27. Which of the walls of an Earthship is made of glass? Question 28. What is meant by the term nest? Question 29. Why does Joyce call Earthships a real bargain? Question 30. What will the students probably bring to the presentation? Listen to a lecture in a political science class.